everyone, and welcome into episode 112 of the Stomp the Bus show. I am your host, Mark Harris, joined by Colton Dodgson, who is rocking his Eagles hat. Happy for you
It's
with the
not leaving my
birds.
head.
Moving on to the Super Bowl. Love that. We got some interesting stuff to talk about in this show. ASU basketball, men's basketball continues to just hold serve, for better or worse. ASU hockey continues to play fairly well in the NCHC, and then ASU football getting some interesting. There's not really any hard news, but there's some interesting offseason topics that have kind of emerged in this end of January. So we'll talk about all that first. Please continue to like and subscribe on YouTube, rate and review on your podcast platform of choice, and continue to follow all the great content put out by the College Huddle. Earlier tonight, I went on the Wildcat Radio 2.0 to preview the game on Saturday between the Wildcats and the Sun Devils. Talked a lot about kind of the big picture stuff with Bobby Hurley, which we'll get to probably some more in this episode. But check that out with Adam Green and Brent Berry. Good conversation.
You had to dig for that one. You almost blanked on the name.
Oh my gosh! I didn't want to mess it up, but so good show with them. But this is an ASU show, not a U of A show.
And Mark, I think that's why I take exception with how you started this show, and allow me to explain why.
Okay.
The Eagles making the Super Bowl is obviously a huge story, but the ASU angle here is the old friend that they had to go through to get there, right?
Zane Gonzalez?
Yes, that's who I'm referring to, Zane Gonzalez. Of course, I'm referring to Jayden Daniels. And it is really...
we haven't talked much about him on this show.
No,
we kind of just siloed it off. But continue, yeah.
No, totally, man. He has essentially taken the NFL by storm. I may be of the opinion that the hype went off the rails maybe a little bit. He looked great. He had a great rookie season. I think I heard, I don't want to miscategorize this asinine comment, but I want to say it was Teddy Bruschi or somebody on ESPN's excellent football panel that called Jayden Daniels invincible. But I think a 55-24 loss in the NFC Championship would make you very much vincible. Very much vincible. So, I mean, it's cool to see him doing what he's doing. Am I still? Oh, I just disappeared.
Sorry,
it's all
messed
good.
That up.
No, it's all good. I just wanted to make sure I was still here. It's cool to see, the ASU angle and ASU be recognized as sort of the place that Jayden Daniels started. But it was cool to see. It was cool to see the height. Yeah, the way he left was a little weird, and that's kind of why I was like, oh, okay, I'm glad to see this. So I don't know what I didn't like about it. Yeah, I was just gonna say now that I mentioned it, I might as well just say don't say you're fully committed to ASU 2 weeks before you transfer to LSU. That was my only beef. You just don't have to say anything, right? You don't have to release some statement. But again, that was a long time ago. I think my highlight of Jayden Daniels' NFC Championship performance was his dance down two scores. I think that was a personal favorite.
I knew you were going to bring that up.
Yeah, no, that was really good. But again, I think I'm being a little critical, and that's fine. I heard all week that the Eagles were going to be upset by the Commanders and that there was no chance they covered the 6 points that they were favored by. I think they covered that 4 times, if I'm not mistaken. I think they covered it 4 times.
This is great.
So, we'll be watching Jalen Hurts, who can't throw the ball and doesn't have what it takes to lead a team to a Super Bowl championship. We'll be watching Jalen Hurts play in his second Super Bowl in a little over a week. So, yeah. But a lot of people who know more than I do told me that they had no chance and the Commanders would be in the Super Bowl. So,
I'll say this to start out with. it's just a good thing about us as ASU fans that the first time we or one of us negatively talks about Jayden Daniels is just in an NFL, based on an NFL NFL rivalry, NFL game.
Yeah.
So you mentioned one thing about Daniels that you didn't like how he left.
I just let me clarify. I just thought it was strange.
No,
I just thought it was strange.
It was strange. There's rumors out there that he was coerced to doing that by Ray Anderson and Herm Edwards to save face. So, and that's why it was all produced, and that's why, that's
what's the rationale behind that?
The rationale was that they just kind of wanted to keep Crow off their backs for a little bit. And so Jayden was already in the process of trying to leave, and they're like, "Hey, can you put it?" So that's just a rumor, and I do think that it does kind of explain that. I don't have any. Yeah, so as an ASU,
so odd.
It was odd, and if that is true, it makes me dislike Ray Anderson a little bit more, because it's like, dude, you're having this kid take the heat.
Yeah.
So
you're saying they coerced him into transferring, or like motivating
not
him.
Into
the rumor, the rumor is, then what? They were motivating him to stay? What were they motivating him to do?
They were motivated to stay, but also releasing that video to like have the optics of him staying, and then
I'm following
basically
now.
Just
okay, so
down the road. Yeah.
They kind of, so he was
This is a rumor.
Again, let's clarify, this is a rumor that Mark read. But Mark is one of the more reliable sources I've ever counted on in my life. So anyway, so the rumor is that he was sort of talked into releasing that video, despite the fact that he was a little uncertain about his future. That the focus would shift from Ray Anderson and Herm Edwards to Jayden Daniels, so to speak.
Well, it would just kind of,
so people would have something more to talk about. Something else. Okay.
For optics. Yes. So
I think the only,
that's why I don't blame Jayden Daniels quite as much for like putting out the video and then eventually leaving. Right.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's an explainable thing. And I also I don't have any ill will towards Jayden. Like,
honestly, I don't either.
Just as you were earlier, he is really good. Like, he
is great. I'm not saying he's not great. I'm not saying he's not great. All that I was saying was, I think the hype got off the rails a little bit.
Yeah.
Which, again, absolutely, I think the season he put together is up there among one of the more.
The best rookie quarterback season, I think because their roster, it's not like
it is.
Yeah.
That's another good point. Is that roster?
Yeah.
That's not like a Brock Purdy situation where you're seeing a roster elevate a quarterback. This was a situation where the quarterback elevated a roster.
Yeah. And there was
as a rookie, a 24, 25-year-old rookie. I think he's 24. An older rookie, but still a rookie. And no shade. He played a great game. Honestly, I think
he did play well.
I was nervous for most of that game.
Yeah.
It took until like 3 scores until I was like, okay, I think we've got this. But he's an excellent player, and I think
that's
just
such a
at an
code.
Absurd clip. Yeah, it is. And that was kind of like, you get used to seeing that watching the Eagles, but to see a team do it so often and convert with such regularity, it's not like they're just recklessly doing it. It was impressive. Jayden Daniels was impressive. I think he's awesome. I think again, if there's any truth, I think the only, and we've talked about it quite a bit in the history of this show, but I think the only adjective that I can really use to describe the Herm Edwards, Ray Anderson era is like grimy. That's like the first thing that comes to mind for me. It's just like so much going on that we'll probably never even know about. Right. Like, and if there's truth to that Jayden Daniels thing, then I really feel for him, because he was the scapegoat for a staggering amount of ineptitude, I think,
especially
on the part of adults, on the part of professionals.
Yes.
At this time, he's a 22-year-old kid. I guess 22 isn't
probably 21.
That's a kid, man.
Yeah.
21, close. 22, something like that, right? So it's just like the only way I can describe it is grimy. That's like the first word that comes to mind.
No, I don't want to. I don't want to go back into that. I think with your comments,
the only reason I went back into it is because you brought up that story. Right. I hadn't heard that before.
Well, and again, I've just kind of seen it floating around out there. I don't want to,
if it's true, let's.
It does make sense, though. It does make sense.
It makes sense given the era and what was going on. It does sort of fit with what was happening.
Well, I do think, we acknowledge his greatness in the NFL. Like, it's clear. I mean, it's either him or Matt Stafford. Maybe I think Hurts was so good. Hurts was so good in that game that maybe, but he's at worst a top 3 quarterback in the NFC at worst.
And are we talking? Like Jayden Daniels in the NFC? Yeah, I think you can put him there. The NFC's. Yeah, I think. I think I would agree with that. I think maybe. Yeah, we could go down a rabbit hole here. I know you got other stuff you want to get to. I was just thinking about it. Well, but yeah, incredible rookie season. Shout out to him.
No, your point about him, the hype getting overblown, because I think like the Detroit defense was so injured, and it's like, what is he supposed to do? Not play super well? Like, of course, but like that is a factor. And then like the Philly defense, like even though he played well in that game, the Philly defense was just able to constrict him a little more. So.
It wasn't even that. It was like the turnovers. And
that's true.
Real quick, before we move on, I just have to say this because it sort of came to fruition. I think what we saw in this NFC Championship was the product of two teams being the beneficiary and being sort of at a disadvantage for the game that they had just played, right? You had I researched it a little bit. I did a little bit of digging because I was like, I'm not crazy, right? This feels like this could be a blowout. So I dug into it a little bit. The Commanders forced the 6th fewest turnovers all season and forced 5 in that Lions game. But after that Lions game, everybody wanted to act like that was what they'd done all season, is force turnovers, and they're going to do it again. The Eagles had the 5th fewest giveaways in the NFL. Like that was the story right there. It wasn't going to happen, and it didn't happen, right? Well, so like, I think it frustrated me because it just felt lazy. Like it felt like nobody was talking about the context behind both of those games. Stafford diced the Eagles up in a blizzard. I get it. Those DBs were sliding all over the place. They're chopping their feet trying to get any sort of traction. It was a messy game on both sides. The Eagles looked off. The Rams looked off. So it was one of those games where it's like, just survive. And I feel like the Eagles everybody was down on Philly because of the Packers and the Rams. You've got Jalen Hurts in the Packers game playing 3 weeks removed from a concussion. And then I'll wrap this up. I'm almost done, because I'm passionate about this, Mark. You got to give me my platform. And then you've got the Blizzard game. And I think that the Eagles were just grossly undervalued coming into this game. The Commanders were very clearly overvalued because of what Jared Goff did and because of what that defense looked like. So, and it's still like, you're talking, if the Lions don't fumble on that drive in the red zone that could have put them up 14-3, who knows what happens in that game. So
don't call the Jameson Williams pass. Yeah. No, for sure.
And
but
that's my take.
Yeah, for sure. But like, again, this is not us. I think the defense being so bad for the Commanders, like that is a reason why Jayden Daniels, like, it's a credit to him that he was able to perform this whole season, needing to score 30 points in a good chunk of these games, or more than 30 points. To win a good chunk of these games. So again, like Jayden Daniels, like it's from us, like we don't have any issue. Like I know there are some ASU fans who still kind of just don't, aren't in the best, just don't love Jayden Daniels. I think he doesn't. by virtue of, playing at LSU for 2 years and transferring from ASU, which again, I totally understand, like he made the right decision to leave, getting off a burning bus, basically.
Yeah.
But like he doesn't get remembered.
It feels like he was the scapegoat.
It feels like
he's kind of it feels like he's been kind of scapegoated a little bit. Or like maybe not scapegoat is the right word. Maybe it's more like lumped into a terrible situation.
Yes.
Like
he's
the target of a bunch of frustration, and it helps now that ASU is where they are. But for a while there, he was the target of a lot of frustration that wasn't necessarily warranted. It wasn't his fault. I mean, and maybe some of that comes back to his mom, right? And what happened with all of the recruiting. But again, that's not Jayden Daniels.
Right.
So that's kind of how his era, at least how I perceive it.
Yeah, it's so much of him. It's literally nothing that he did. Like, you could see his freshman year at ASU, he was incredible. Like, and then his sophomore year was the pandemic, so it doesn't really count. And then his junior year, which I have a tweet pulled up from a Stomp the Bus podcast on the YouTube page. I tweeted this probably January 18th, so that's during the Detroit game, I imagine. The coaching of Jayden Daniels by the ASU staff in 2021 continues to age very poorly. I think the fact that he was very mediocre in 2021, and like, I don't care what happens, like he's clearly not a mediocre player. Like we know that, like obviously, but like that specific year, he had 10 touchdown passes and 10 picks. And so I think that adds to the negative / underwhelming thoughts around Jayden Daniels at ASU. It's like he was here, he played. You saw like his best year was his freshman year here, and that's just such an indictment of the Herm Edwards era. It's like, dude, like Jayden Daniels played 5 years of college football. His worst year by far is his junior year was on that 2021 team. So. Didn't expect that we'd be diving back into the whole Jayden Daniels issue, but it has, it's popped up, and it's just like
it's topical.
And I'm glad you mentioned something. Like, I am so glad that like we don't have to deal with this as like, because like now he's good, and like like I mean, not now he's good, like he's been good, but like it's been easier to deal with like the him not being as good as he could have been at ASU when ASU had this past season it just did. And you have
exactly. That's what I knew you were trying to get at, right? And I think the rate and how quickly the turnaround happened is a big reason why we don't feel those residual effects anymore, and like why watching Jayden Daniels playing an NFC championship game isn't like painful for us, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So, and I think it's a testament to how quick Kenny Dillingham turned this around, because I mean, you could, not that anybody would do this, but go back and revisit our predictions from the beginning of this season. I think I said my feeling on a potential ceiling for this team was 75. Right. Like, so we didn't think we'd be here, and I think the reason we are here is why we're able to reflect on that, the Jayden Daniels chapter of ASU football, with a little more, I don't know, sensibility. Or not so emotional about it.
Yeah, for sure. It doesn't help that like ASU was basically also the first like victim school of the transfer portal, and now you kind of see it happen more often when like a coach leaves or there's drama, like all these guys leave the program, and so that wasn't something that college fans were used to dealing with. And now it's more, everyone just kind of understands it more. And so as we kind of wrap up this conversation that wasn't planned, we were not planning on talking about Jayden Daniels, but
that's how it goes. Like, this is radio, Mark.
Yeah, that's exactly. I'll say that, no, like I'm glad he's doing well, and like it is kind of it. I feel like everything's been put to bed on that. That's what I'm trying to get to. It's in the past.
A page is turned.
Exactly, a page is turned. And I mean, Jayden Daniels is an ASU graduate too. Like for the rest of his life, his college degree is from ASU. So like he spent 3 years here. But
his Heisman's from LSU.
He just got dealt such a bad. Yeah, I know, but so I want to bring something with LSU up too. Like he was dealt some bad luck at ASU with just the general dysfunction, and then at LSU he was dealt bad luck in the sense that last year when he was incredible, and he had Brian Thomas Jr. and Malik Neighbors, they went 9-3 because it was like the worst LSU defense that I don't think we like in all of our time watching college football, like since the late 2000s, probably that's probably the worst LSU defense that I've ever seen. And like it could have kept them from like winning the national championship. Honestly, that's how good he was last year with his dual threat abilities. Like he had some bad luck in college, even though he was able to win a Heisman just by wrong place at the wrong time for ASU other than year one. And then just happening to be at LSU when they have the worst defense in years. And so it is kind of cool seeing like some of the good luck come towards his way. Like he's drafted by Washington, but he's drafted by them. No Dan Snyder. And like, obviously like he's like, before I like say like, oh, he's gotten good luck. Like he's the main reason for their success. Like
I was going to say, he's kind of making his own luck.
He's making his success, but it also helps to have Dan Quinn as your first head coach in the NFL. Like a true, like it's not like he had Caleb Williams' fate this year, right? So like, obviously he would have been better in Chicago, like with Eberflus again. Like I'm not, but in Cliff Kingsbury, like he's a good OC. I think at this point we know like he knows what he's doing. He may not be a good head coach, but
no one loves a tunnel screen quite like that guy does.
Yeah, that's true. So anyway, kind of wrapping up our impromptu Jayden Daniels discussion here. Moving to the hardwood.
Because his season's over. Just make that clear. Because his season is over.
For ASU men's basketball, the Sun Devils are 12-8. Season is over. The football season, you mean?
No, sorry. I think we're on a delay.
Men's basketball season it's not over. Oh.
Yeah.
What did you mean?
No, it's all good. It's all good. Nothing. Just move on. It's all good. We're the delay is screwing us up.
Woo. All right. Technology. Anyway, ASU men's basketball 12-8. On Tuesday night, they won a really ugly game against Colorado, 70-68, after they lost at home to number 3 Iowa State, 76-61. They're just kind of holding serve, Colton. It's not ASU is kind of one of those teams that is on the bubble right now, on the kind of right on the outside looking in. I don't know. Like, I don't really know what to make of this team, this ASU men's basketball team, you know?
That the margin in that Iowa State game doesn't cease to amaze me. Like it is so insane that they ended up losing that game by 15 points when what was that, like a 2-point game with 5 minutes left or something like that?
I think it was a 1-point game with 5 minutes left, and then Iowa State just turned on the gas and it was over.
A complete just unreal. Yeah, I talked about it last week, like when we discussed in the aftermath of the West Virginia game, kind of what we felt would happen. And I think my opinion was, I don't really know how to sum this game up until I see what to do afterwards. If this is like the fork in the road for them, right? If that was like the fork in the road for them, like if they start, hanging around doing some things, and it looked like they were going to against Iowa State. That's why that game baffles me. It looked like, oh, okay, maybe I remember I was out and about with the wife on Saturday. I just felt 40 saying that, but I was out and about, and I was just kind of following it on my phone. I was like, wow, I got home, turned it on with like 10 minutes left. I'm like, they might do this. I think I walked out of the room and came back in like 15-ish minutes, and I was like, oh, okay. I felt like I was going to have to eat crow a little bit in terms of how critical I was. But much of my points, I think, remain in terms of like how I felt about this team. And
yeah,
they probably shouldn't have won that Colorado game with the stuff that happened there at the end. I thought that travel call was absurd. But you foul the tying 3-pointer right on a closeout by Sean Phillips. He misses one, you get fortunate. And then they get that travel call. It was just like it looks. I'm kind of at a loss because it looks exactly like it always has. And I get Quaintance was out, right? That's why I think this game was such a big win for
yeah.
ASU on the road in elevation without Quaintance. That's big.
Colorado was desperate, if nothing else. They're not good, but they were desperate.
Right. And a win on the road is a win. You can't really especially at this point when you have to stack as many as you can. You can't go for style points, just escape these places with wins, So again, I think my position right now is very similar to where it was last week, regardless of the Iowa State and the Colorado games. Who knows what happens against U of A, right? They're coming off of the Iowa State win. How will that affect it? Who knows? But again, the course hasn't altered very much for me in terms of how I perceive this team and
I agree.
Things like that.
Because they lost a game they were supposed to lose, and they won a game they were supposed to win. And in some ways, they looked better in the game that they lost than in the game that they won. And
they had a chance to win the game that they were supposed to lose.
Right.
And they fumbled that. And not just fumbled it, but catastrophically fumbled that in a way that it's like a team with this level. And I get Iowa State, great team, number 3 team in the country. Give them credit. They're awesome. But for a team to melt down at home, the way that ASU melted down, the fact that is in their DNA is a little concerning.
We know that.
To me.
I mean,
but that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
That's what's so frustrating is
yes.
That's in their DNA. They're capable of melting down like that. And how do you trust a team that is capable of that?
That word you just said, trust, is the whole basis of the conversation. Even though they're 12, being 12-8 right now is not the worst thing. It's not the best, but you are everything is still in front of you. But because if you had lost that Colorado game, then that would have messed up your resume so much.
Right.
I don't think but this game, it's actually not a must win. It feels like a must win, but it's a game that if you lose, your margin for error goes down a ton. Right. If you lose to Arizona, then you pretty much have to win the K-State and at Oklahoma State games, because those are 2 of the worst teams in the league. And with this ASU team, the one thing you can say is they haven't really been losing to teams that they should beat, or they're winning all the games they're supposed to win. And they've won 2 or maybe 1 game, the West Virginia game, against a team they weren't supposed to beat. So it's that's why it's hard to trust this team. The offense, the one thing that even though this team, the talent is clear, they have better talent than they usually do, but the ugly offensive droughts remain. Even in games that they win
with talented scorers.
Yes.
With scorers that I'm like, those guys can knock down a shot. If you were able to manufacture looks for guys like Alston Mason and BJ Freeman, and now Joseph Sannon is back in the mix. If those guys had looks, I feel like this offense would be dangerous, but it just doesn't happen. We don't see it ever.
Not
it's kind of just no. It feels like it's just watching freelance out there. You're just letting these guys the offense is literally called go make plays. There's nothing else there.
I don't agree with that to the degree, but I think the fact that it still shows up enough is the issue, right?
There's no consistency.
There's not. Yes, exactly. And
maybe that's a better way of putting
it. And it shows up too often, that the bad offensive play, even if it sometimes does look good. But I think what we've kind of been circling around in this conversation is like, what do we do with Hurley? Because he made some comments after the Iowa State game about like not getting great fan support, and he was right. Like Iowa State fans, it was, I don't want to say they took over. It was like half and half.
Were you at that game?
Yeah, I was. Yeah, and
okay.
they're like, they had chants, and it was funny. You couldn't really tell because we have like the same exact colors, but it wasn't. It was a bad like it was a bad crowd game for ASU given the fact that it was the number 3 team. And I bet
we kind of expected that in the Big 12, though, right?
Oh yeah, for sure. I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised at all. And I think you'd get a better crowd game for like whatever UCLA basketball is doing this year. I think they're having like an okay season. You probably get a better crowd for that than you would an Iowa State team that isn't like a famous power in basketball, but is just a way better team right now. And so like but it also feels like the fan base is kind of done with Hurley too, because you can't trust this team, even though even though they do have some talent. So it's like I feel like if like this feels like a critical year for Hurley, even though we've said that before. But this year there's no excuses, and I don't know. Like it's so funny because it might just come down to like I guess it could come down to Selection Sunday again. Like
which
I don't know. It's such a
that's what it always does. That feels like the ceiling with Hurley is just hope the bubble goes your way.
Like, yeah.
That feels like what
they might not ever have a team as talented as this next year, right? Because most of these guys will leave, and so it's like I don't know. There's a part of me that like if they don't I want them to make the tournament. I want them to make the tournament every year. But if they don't, like, I wouldn't be that upset. I wouldn't be like having a reset wouldn't be the worst thing. We see this in the NFL and the NBA. Like the ASU men's basketball this season, because last season they were just awful. This season, it feels like they're one of these teams that like is like what the Saints had been for years post Breeze, where they're just like chugging, like kind of what my Seattle Seahawks are right now. I think the Seahawks are in a better, like have a higher ceiling, but they've just kind of chugged along 9-8, 9-8. The Atlanta Hawks in the NBA, like they make the play in, but they're not like if ASU men's basketball makes the tournament, there's like Hurley staying for like if he would leave, it would be on his own volition, right? Like,
I don't think there's a scenario where I'm trying to think of all of the context behind this season, right? And obviously missing the tournament with the roster that they have, regardless of the injuries, which is going to lead me to my next point. I feel like is a failure. This team should have absolutely made the tournament, right? We talked about them as a middle of the pack Big 12 team. Maybe they've been on the lower end of that middle, right? But typically that's a team that has a real solid chance at getting into the field.
Yeah. I mean, they're I'd say right below the middle. There's 5 teams worse than them.
Yeah.
So,
And from one perspective, you can look at it as like, okay, the step up in competition from the Big 12 and the Pac-12 is pretty significant, I would say. I think they're consistently playing better teams, and the fact that they're still kind of where they were, I think is a mark in favor of Hurley. I don't think there's a scenario where you mentioned under his own volition. I think that is really the only scenario where he's gone after this season. I don't think they part with him. I think it's the scenario where you're looking at this and you're like, okay, key players were out. Joseph Sannon missed some time. BJ Freeman has missed some time. Jaden Quaintance has missed some time. So that's something in his favor where it's looking at it as like, oh, okay, maybe coaching got them this far, where they didn't, and they had that run in the beginning. So maybe it's like, oh, they just ran into the Big 12 buzzsaw. I think there's so many different angles that favor Hurley having an uphill battle this year that it would be appealing to Graham Rossini in the athletic department to see what he does in his second year in the Big 12.
Yeah.
I don't see any scenario where he's gone unless he leaves. That's the thing.
Yeah, I think so. I think I agree with you. I think they would have to collapse down the stretch for
That's a good
him
point.
to be gone. And it's possible. It is possible with this team. Like,
yeah.
Again, we've said you can't trust this team. So it's possible, but there's still so much left to be done. Like, there's still 11 games left in the regular season. There's so many different ways it can go, you know? If they go 8-3 on that stretch, then that would be great. That seems like a hard thing to do. It's like, what if they just go like 5-6? Let's say they go 5-6, and they would be 17 and 16, right? No, 17-14. That's probably not good enough to get into the tournament. So they need to.
But it's good enough for Hurley to stay, I would think.
Yes.
I don't think they look at that as like Hurley's gone with this record.
So like, yeah, that might be like kind of the worst case scenario, actually, being like just a team that's like good enough to get in the NIT, but not even close to the tournament. This game is big because like you only have so many more easy, and I'm put easy in quotations. I would say so many more games where you're like not playing a ranked team, right? Like K-State and Oklahoma State, those will still be tough games. You have hosting TCU, that's a game you should win. Like at Utah, but like you still have Arizona twice. You have twice against Texas Tech, who's good. You have Houston remaining. BYU's kind of at your level. It's like this is not like I think you don't have to play Iowa State or Kansas or Baylor. Like those are you've in West Virginia. You've cleared those teams out of the way. So you do have like Utah, TCU, Kansas State, Oklahoma State. These are teams that like are at or worse of your level, And so there is hope remaining.
I'm looking at that Kansas State, Oklahoma State, Texas Tech stretch right there as
after U of A,
like
yeah.
Right. As like the pivotal point.
Yeah.
You mentioned U of A is probably not a must win, and I think you're right. I don't know if they'll.
It's close, but it's not.
Yeah. I don't think it's quite there, but I do think logic would tell you they're probably not going to beat U of A. Could they beat U of A? Sure. They have the talent to, and that's why we're frustrated.
Yep.
Is they could absolutely beat U of A with the talent on this roster. Will they? Probably not. So then you look at Kansas State, Oklahoma State, and Texas Tech. Kansas State and Oklahoma State are near the bottom of this conference, right? And Oklahoma State is on the road, but you get to play Kansas State at home. Then you get to go on the road, play Oklahoma State. It feels like you're building up to that Texas Tech game if you take care of business. So that's why I'm looking at Kansas State, Oklahoma State, and Texas Tech as like this could be where we finally see what this team is. We've talked about the inconsistency. We've talked about we don't trust them, all of those things, and that's all true.
Yeah.
But I think this is where they define their season is that February 4th to February 12th stretch where they do have to play a top 25 team in Lubbock. So
and that's a tough place to play.
It's a tall order. It's a very tough place to play. But you have to beat Kansas State and Oklahoma State. Those are must wins. You have to get those games.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that Texas Tech game, I'm looking at February 12th as such a pivotal game in terms of what this team could ultimately accomplish. You hope they're healthy going into that game. You hope the Quainton's ankle issue is behind him. Who knows? You hope everybody is feeling good and you can go into that game at full strength. And I think that stretch of 3 games will tell you what this team is and ultimately give you a better feel for what their postseason prospects might be.
Yeah. No, they're in an interesting spot. You hope. It seems like Quaintance will be back for this game. His injury hasn't been talked about like it's super serious. BJ Freeman,
and he did play through it once, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, BJ Freeman definitely seems more up in the air. Quaintance, like he didn't. I'm sorry, Sannon didn't play well against Colorado, but you still want him out there. And it seems like if he was able to play that much, like guys have bad games. Like he wasn't going to continue shooting like 55.
Especially shooters.
Yeah. He wasn't going to continue shooting
especially
like
guys like him.
55% from three, you know, and he played fairly well against Iowa State. So that's the thing is like if they just kind of come together a little bit and like I'll say this, if they beat Kansas State and Oklahoma State, like both games where they were clearly the better team, then that would be very encouraging to me because then you're kind of separating, you know. And that's one of the issues. You didn't separate from Colorado last night. Like you easily could have lost. And so it's weird. It's a weird, like this is a weird team because it's like the most talented Hurley team, but it's like the same product. You think like, oh, this is where they're going to finally fall off, and then they beat West Virginia last week, and like, okay, I guess they're still humming along, and then it's like they're just a team that like you can't really get rid of, but you don't really trust them to like be a threat either. It's a weird space.
Man, that Iowa State game though was just so. It was such a snapshot of what we've seen so often with this team. It's like they're so close to doing something great. They have so many opportunities where they're so close to like turning a corner where you're like, wow, maybe they're playing up to what their potential, what they're capable of, whatever. And then just 15-point loss.
I know.
Like, where does that come from? It's so, and that's a hard thing to come back from. But at the same time, the streakiness of these Hurley teams have shown you like they're never truly out until they don't get picked for the first four. Like they just hang around, you know. I think that Colorado game showed, and I don't think there was any doubt just how important Jayden Quaintance is to this team, right?
Yeah.
Playing without him.
Oh yeah, like there's no chance in hell that they beat U of A without Jayden Quaintance. Like there's no.
And he's just such a defensive presence. Does enough offensively too, especially for a 17-year-old. Like, you hope he hangs around next season. Who knows, but that's a guy you can build around.
Oh, for sure. I mean, if you're one of the people who like wants Hurley to return, another thing that like another quiver in your cap for the argument, or that's a weird phrase, but like another thing.
I don't know if I've heard that one.
Yeah. Another thing to add to your argument is that bringing back Hurley, probably like if Quaintance comes back, it'll be with Hurley. Like if we make a coaching change, he's not going to return. Like he's going to go somewhere else. He might go somewhere else anyway. There's nothing specifically pointing to that, but if Hurley stays, it's a way better chance that you keep Quaintance. And so maybe that's like if they barely miss the tournament, but Quaintance is coming back. I'd be like, yeah, let's bring back Hurley for one more year then, if that's what it means to bring back Quaintance, right?
Yeah, like, I don't. Again, my stance on it is I don't think, barring a 2-win stretch over these last 11 games, whatever it is, I don't see any scenario where Hurley's gone after 1 year in the Big 12. Like they just haven't been. They haven't been significantly outmatched, and I think that's why we're frustrated.
Yes,
and
that's a good way
I think that's a big determining factor. Is it's not like this team made the jump and they're getting run off the floor every night, because in that case, maybe you do need to look in a different direction. Maybe he's not the guy to lead you into this new conference, but that just hasn't been the case, and I think that's what is going to play into probably another season in this conference, and hopefully one with Jayden Quaintance in the starting lineup. But again, I pointed to those 3 games. My opinion of this team is not going to change until I see what happens over those 3 games. That's sort of my take. Right. This U of A game, win or lose, truthfully, I won't feel differently about this team. I'll be like, that's exactly what they are.
Yeah, no, I get that. Okay, well, you say it. I think we both agree that it seems pretty unlikely that Hurley is gone after this year. Although it's on the table, it's definitely on the table.
It's not impossible.
Do you want him to be gone? Because I feel like in past like this, we kind of had the same type of season 2 years ago, but at that point, like we didn't want him to be gone because it's like, I don't know. But this year, I feel like it's just more like, okay, it's another season like this. Like, what, like, would you be more open to him just being gone?
I think, again, my perspective on this will always come back to weigh the alternatives. I don't know if ASU as a basketball program is necessarily in a place right now to attract somebody that could produce something more effective than what Hurley has produced here, right?
Yeah.
We've talked about the arena and the facilities are probably a little better, but
The arena.
we've talked
Yeah.
about the arena is the big thing. We've talked about sort of the perception, the Big 12 fan takeover. That's also, there just isn't
The history.
a
Yeah.
perception around this program that it's going to be super appealing to one of those up and coming guys, right?
Yeah.
Like, you're not going to go out and get the next Nate Oates to come coach at
Right.
ASU,
Right.
So I think that's my big thing is yeah, maybe the ceiling is capped, but I also think there's a floor with this team, and the floor is not overly uncomfortable. We're not watching, I watched DePaul UConn last night, and DePaul has one conference win, right? Like we're not
Right.
looking. They have a new coach. Supposedly not big into DePaul. I haven't looked into them a ton, but based on what I was able to glean from the broadcast, they seem to be turning it around. But you're not looking at a program in the state that like a DePaul is in. You're looking at a middle of the pack Big 12 team. And is there somebody out there that could elevate you to a point that is higher than that? And I don't necessarily know if there is, given the state around this
Yeah.
basketball program, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's my big reservation with Hurley. And you could argue that it's what he's doing this season, and maybe given the talent, you're looking at more of a net neutral. But the jump to the Big 12, him kind of doing what he's always done in a much stronger conference
Mm-hmm.
is okay. Maybe there's something there. Maybe there should be some credit given. They had a good run at that Acrisure Classic early in the season. They were competitive against
Yep.
Gonzaga,
Well,
who's
and
kind of fallen off a little bit, but
those wins in the Acrisure Classic, like those are keeping you on the bubble mix right now.
right.
Like
Exactly.
that's
So yeah, I think that's the best way that I can sum it up is like obviously you want to be a fan of a team that is capable of making a tournament run and realistically, we talk about Cinderellas every year, but like there are only a handful of teams that are capable of winning a national championship, right?
yeah.
Cinderellas can make their runs or whatever, but like you're never looking at a Oakland as a team that's going to win a national championship, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know if there's a coach out there that elevates ASU's ceiling that would realistically want to coach this team that elevates
Right.
ASU's ceiling higher than Hurley has elevated it.
Yeah, I mostly agree. I think there's always a chance that you find a coach at a lower level and it hits, right? That is always on the
That's
board.
true.
But
Yep.
like all the things, all the, downsides of ASU basketball are real. I will say I do think the program holistically is in a better spot than it was 2 years ago when, remember, the Desmond Cambridge team, Warren Washington, like that team barely made the NCAA tournament and probably needed a three-quarters court shot to go in from Cambridge to make that happen. So they had
Yep.
that was such a Bobby Hurley team because they had a good non-con, totally went down in Pac-12 play and like needed to win a few wins down the stretch to barely make the tournament. But at that point, like there was way more turmoil in the ASU athletic department, much less of an NIL presence, and you were in the Pac-12, which was the worst league. Now
Right.
like one thing you do have is like you are in the maybe not the best college basketball league, but like a top shelf men's college basketball league. It is an opportunity to coach in the Big 12. NIL is way more settled at ASU right now than it was back then. And with the house settlement coming, right, like then you'll have some more guaranteed money that's just coming straight from the athletic department. So that helps. And you just have a locked-in athletic director in Graham Rossini. So I think it's a better job than it was 2 years ago, but it's not by a lot, and all of the downsides remain. So I will say this one thing we've been mentioning is like, I know that if you're Graham Rossini, you don't want this to be a discussion at the end of the year. You're hoping ASU makes the tournament so you won't have to make a tough choice, or
right.
or is it tournament adjacent? Because I think Hurley has good relationships at ASU and all that. So you don't want to, and it won't be a universally popular decision no matter what. But winning this game, if you beat Arizona, I don't know if it changes how I think about the team a lot, but it is that would be a huge win to have on your resume, and it gives
100%. There's no denying that. There's no denying that it would absolutely boost their standing. It's more of an identity thing.
Absolutely. No, yeah, the identity doesn't change even if they win.
Right.
That's the weird place that we are.
It falls right in line with what their identity is.
Yes.
Their identity and what we've seen from them would tell you that they win this game. That's how fluky they are. So.
Yep. And so Arizona's been playing better. They've been on a roll, Big 12 play. Really just they got blown out at Texas Tech, but that's not a horrible loss. They squeaked. Well, the final score doesn't indicate they squeaked by, but they hit a late shot to tie with Iowa State. I think one thing that you can hope for as ASU fans is maybe some negative regression hits U of A in this game. Caleb Love is a guy who he can score a lot, but he can also shoot you out of a game. With that said, they have guys on offense that are scoring right now. You have why won't this load? Come on, Love averaging 15.7, Jayden Bradley and Lewis both in double digits, and then you have 5 guys averaging at least 7.6 points per game. That's
balanced.
Tough.
They're deep.
And ASU's been pretty balanced offensively too. We have 10 guys averaging double digits. So it's not that's actually been an encouraging thing about this season. The fact that you have guys who can step up when other guys aren't hitting. That's one of the reasons they've been able to just kind of shuffle along, right? But U of A is even kind of a more souped up version of that. I mean, to have, and then another guy who's at 6 points per game, that's just a lot of guys who can hurt you. They have size. They always have size. So they're not an unbeatable team, but they've clearly come together in Big 12 play because they had a rough non-conference, but they've kind of stabilized in Big 12 play. So it's possible. Adam Miller's been shooting the ball really well lately. He's been playing well. Alston Mason has been playing well. Bashir Jihad hasn't been in his best in recent games, but one thing that stuck out in the Iowa State game is that dude gets to the line, man. And having that repeatable scoring is so big. Anyway, we had some accidentally clicked the wrong button there. I'll add Colton to the show soon, but we are. It's a weird place to be right now as ASU men's basketball fans. It's it doesn't feel like we're going to beat U of A. I think ASU loses 72-67 at home. Just sent an email to Colton. It's a weird spot they're in as a program. And this game would do so much to just kind of quell the naysayers, right? To quell the people that are hey, you have this talented team and you're kind of at the same level you've been at before. A win here, like we said earlier, it's not going to change the big picture of this season, but it does change. It changes the short term, and it just gives them more wiggle room. And it's just that's where we are with this team. So it's you really hope BJ Freeman comes back. He's been a consistent scorer for this team, and he's kept them in a lot of games, even some of the games that they've lost. But it's gonna be a tough one, and I don't love that it's an 11 a.m. tip off. That's clearly instituted by TV networks. It's going to be on CBS, so that had to factor in. Yeah, so Colton might not return. We had some computer issues, but I'll touch on a few things with ASU football later as the show wraps up. I did want to mention ASU men's hockey. They've been playing pretty well, and they're in the mix for the NCAA tournament, and they're on track to make it. Their record is 14-9-1 overall, and they're high in the NCHC conference. Split with Colorado College last weekend. They're on the road at Miami of Ohio on Friday night and Saturday night. So right now they are third in the conference, the NCHC, with 28 points. They're 2 points behind Western Michigan and 1 point behind Omaha, which has 29. So they're in the mix. They can still win the NCHC, and they've played well enough to do it. I don't have any, real detailed thoughts, but I just wanted to shout them out, recognize just a good season that they're having, and hopefully they can keep it up. This is an opportunity to build their record against a bad Miami of Ohio team, and with how they handled the road series against St. Cloud 2 weeks ago, I trust them to have a good outing this weekend in Miami, Ohio. Not Miami, Florida. All right. I want to share some stuff about ASU football. Not really stuff that actually matters in a weird way, but just some attention they've gotten, or attention a few of the players have gotten on Twitter, and they've gotten on some lists. So I'm just going to roll through the Stomp the Bus Twitter feed on my screen, and it's going to show that Sam Leavitt is getting a ton of offseason hype. On3's quarterback list, one of their writers ranked him as the number one quarterback returning, Sam Leavitt. And I don't totally I think that might be a little high. I think on this specific list, it goes Sam Leavitt, Drew Allard, DJ Legway, Arch Manning, Lenore Sellers, Garrett Nussmeier, Carson Beck, Cade Klubnik, John Mateer, and Nico Iama Lieva. I actually totally agree with Leavitt being above all of those, other than I would put Cade Klubnik above Leavitt at this point just because he has the experience. And Klubnik, Sam Leavitt is the second graded QB on PFF that's returning, right? Cam Ward, Dart, McCord, Shador, all going to the NFL. And then it's Klubnik who's ahead. So I'm fine with Klubnik entering the year as the top quarterback, but this is such a great place for the program to be. And when you see Jake Fetty out of El Paso get visited by the ASU coaches at his school today, I mean, if you can just link these really high-level quarterbacks together, that is just insanely good for this program. Because if Dillingham can be the Lincoln Riley of the 2020s in terms of quarterback development, man, that is such a good thing for this program when you're playing in the Big 12. When you look at Sam Leavitt, he proved he just came out of nowhere and just proved everyone wrong. And he's getting the offseason attention for it, man. I mean, another list, impact players. They have Leavitt, number 2, behind only Jeremiah Smith at Ohio State. All the other guys on this list, other than Dylan Stewart, edge rusher from South Carolina, they are all from blue blood programs. It goes number 10, Jeremiah Love, running back, Notre Dame. Defensive lineman, L.T. Overton from Alabama, number 9. Notre Dame corner, Leonard Moore at number 8. Bama wide receiver, Ryan Williams at 7. Penn State quarterback, Drew Allar at 6. Texas edge, Colin Simmons, who's very good, at number 5. Dylan Stewart, South Carolina, at 4. Ohio State, Caleb Downs at 3. Sam Leavitt at number 2, Arizona State. So that just shows how good this guy was. I think his Peach Bowl performance really opened some eyes around the country. And his athleticism, again, this is what I mentioned at the Peach Bowl. Like, that first quarter, he was getting ransacked, just totally rushed by these Texas players. And he took like 1 sack. He was able to avoid all this pressure. You saw in the overtime, that 3rd and 14 run that he had to set up the Scadaboo touchdown. You have that athleticism, and then you have the passing stats of him, 24 touchdowns, 6 picks. He's thrown for like 3 touchdowns a game each game at the end of the year. He's on fire. Like, you just feel so good about this program with him coming back. And another guy, Jordan Tyson. So this is on 24/7 Sports. Brad Crawford has Jordan Tyson as the 3rd returning wide receiver behind Jeremiah Smith and Ryan Williams at Alabama. That's a great place to be because those 2 guys are both they will be true sophomores next year, which means that if Jordan Tyson holds serve, and I don't see any reason to think that he won't have a great season this year, then he has a chance to be the top wide receiver off the board next year. He's getting a ton of attention, and it's all earned. Like, you watch the tape, like, this dude got open all the time. He got open underneath, deep. He got yak, tons of yards after catch. So just having those 2 blue chippers, and it's crazy that I'm referring to 2 guys on ASU on the same side of the ball as blue chippers, but it is really cool to see Tyson and Leavitt get national buzz, because that stuff is so important in terms of winning awards. An ASU wide receiver is not going to come out of nowhere to win the Biletnikoff, right? If Cam Scadaboo had been on these lists at this time last year, maybe he still probably doesn't win the Heisman, but he definitely gets invited to New York. And so people being a lot more familiar with Sam Leavitt is going to, like, obviously he has to hold up his end of the bargain and have an awesome season. I don't know why, like, there's no reason to think that Sam Leavitt's going to just get worse, right? So yeah, it's just a good place to be. ASU leads. The ASU is tied with K-State for the top odds to win the Big 12 championship at plus 550 each. BYU and Baylor are behind them at plus 700. One school, University of Arizona, down at the bottom, plus 6,500 at 6 FanDuel there. So, it's just Leavitt and Tyson being on these lists is going to be great. It's going to help them so much in terms of garnering attention during the season. And so it's all with the caveat of, like, they have to play well, right? They have to put up yards, they have to win. But now if they do that, like they did last year, they'll also get the added attention and the added praise that comes with people knowing who you are as players before the season. And then in turn, like, getting all this attention, getting positive vibes. Like, we've seen what this has done for ASU football just since the Peach Bowl. But if you have a whole year of that stacked on top of last year, it can help with recruiting so well. And like I mentioned, Jake Fetty, he's getting offers from Ole Miss, LSU, Auburn. I checked his Twitter page today after seeing the picture of him, and I'm like, oh, okay. This guy's really getting recruited. But he told On3 that he was excited to be going to ASU. And so that's a big thing. Like, it's not just that you're getting, quarterbacks under the radar. You're getting guys that people really want, and you're fending them off because you have something really good to offer. And if you're Jake Fetty, you see what's happening with Sam Levitt, and you're like, oh, I want to play in this offense. I can grow in this offense. There will be good players around me, and we can win. And so just what a difference a year makes. That's all I can say. So the ASU football schedule will be out the next time we speak. Hopefully I won't accidentally click the back button on my StreamYard webpage pulled up, which is what I did earlier, and that's why there was a little pause there, but it's all good. And yeah, it's been fun kind of chatting it up. And this is a big game for men's basketball this weekend, obviously, and so there will be a lot of U of A fans there. But I expect a good contingent from ASU being there as well. Everything's still ahead of this men's basketball program. For as weird and disjointed as they have been, they're 12-8, and if they pick up a big win against U of A, then that's another quad one win on their resume, and all of a sudden things are looking better. So let's hope the guys get healthy. All right, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Thank you for. If you weren't expecting Jayden Daniels talk early on, thanks for listening through. And as always, go Devils. Whoop. Got to get in the screen. There we go. Go Devils. Please like and subscribe, rate and review, and follow the College Huddle. Goodbye.